The little girl in the life float is 11-year-old Terry Jo Duperrault, found in November 1961 in the waters of Bahamas by the crew of a cargo ship. At this time, she had already spent 4 days alone in the middle of the ocean with no fresh water, food, or shade. A few moments after she's being found, she falls in a deep coma. The true story of how she ended up there is much more bizarre and horrifying than anyone can imagine. Before the events leading to her drifting away in the open ocean, Terry Jo was living a happy life with her family, her mother Jean, her father Arthur, the brother Brian, and the youngest sister Rene. The family lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Arthur had planned for many years to take everyone to Florida for a family cruise. So he goes and charters a yacht named Bluebelle, but because he lacks the skills to navigate it himself, he decides to hire a captain, and that captain is none other than former decorated World War II pilot Julian Harvey. In this trip, Harvey also brings along his wife, Mary Dene, to serve as a cook on the ship. In the first days, the trip goes on very well, with everybody getting along, exploring the Caribbean island and snorkeling in the clear blue waters. In the last night before arriving to their final destination, Terry Jo decides to go to sleep in her cabin downstairs, while the rest of her family remained upstairs to enjoy the last moments of their vacation. The next day, the crew of a ship passing through the same waters noticed a man in a small dinghy that was trying desperately to get their attention. His name was Julian Harvey, the same captain of the ship called Bluebelle. As they were pulling the dinghy aboard, they noticed also the lifeless body of a small red-haired girl wearing a life jacket. According to Julian, the Bluebelle ship has sank after hitting a very big storm. He tells them how the previous evening, the ship was hit by powerful waves which basically broke the yacht apart and it made it catch fire. After that, he was forced to abandon the sinking ship and was unable to save any of the members aboard, including his wife. He explains everything in great detail while he was questioned by authorities. Although his calm demeanor and the fact his dinghy had been filled with various survival supplies caused some to initially express serious doubts as to his claims, his story could not be disproven. For the next few days, rescue missions are sent across the sea to the area that he claims the yacht got sunk, but, unfortunately, they are unable to find any survivors. Now, 5 days later, during Julian Harvey's hearing over the sinking of the Bluebelle, one of the captains runs in the room and yells, "There's a survivor." The first reaction of Harvey's is, "Oh my God," and then he quickly adds, "Isn't that wonderful?" once he calms himself and realizes he is not alone. He then excuses himself and leaves to a motel where he checks in under a false name. 2 hours later, an employee finds him lifeless in his room. His close ones suspected that he hadn't been able to overcome the shock and burden of losing his wife and the entire ordeal he's been through, and there were no other clues or indications to say otherwise. However, his sudden death raised even more questions about what could have happened on the night the Bluebelle sank. So everyone expects for Terry Jo to wake up from the coma and shed light over the entire ordeal. By this point, the story was all over the news. Finally, 8 days after the yacht sank, Terry Jo awakes and she is ready to talk. She tells how, while she was sleeping downstairs, she was awakened by her brother's screams. She could tell that some horrible has happened as she could hear him asking their father for help. And then it was silence. She goes to the main deck to check out what is happening and sees her mother and brother lying on the main cabin's floor, surrounded by a big pool of blood. While she was heading towards the upper level, she meets Julian, who looked out of his mind. When she asked him what happened, instead of answering her, he shoved her down the stairs, forcing her to get back to her cabin. At this point, she had no idea what exactly happened, and she thought he was trying to protect her and that he didn't want her to see something that could traumatize her. So, still in shock from what she has already seen, she sits on the bed waiting when all of a sudden she sees water coming into her cabin. She realizes that the boat is sinking and panics, but before she can react in any way, Harvey comes rushing into her room with a rifle pointing at her. None of them say any words. She is terrified by this, and he is just mad. He then turns around and leaves. Probably he makes the last-minute call to not squeeze the trigger and just leave her on the sinking boat where she has no way to survive. She is now alone in her room, terrified, both because she was held at gunpoint few moments before, but also because her room was quickly filling with water. So she decides that she has to go back to the main deck, regardless of what she might find there. She sees Harvey setting the dinghy into the water, jumps in and then floats away into the night. She is now all alone, and this little girl somehow gathers herself in the middle of all this madness and remembers there is a life float lashed to the boat. She knew she had to get into this cork raft or she was going to sink with the boat. She gets into the boat, unties it right on time before the boat gets completely submerged into the water and starts dragging it along with it, and then Jerry Joe finds herself floating in completed darkness and silence. When the sun rises, she realizes that there is only water around her. So, days pass and her feet are in the water all the time and fish start picking at her. Her feet are bleeding, the sun is becoming more and more hot and threatening, she has no food, no drinking water. She starts thinking that she might not last for very long. She can only hope that help will come, that she will be able to spot a plane or a ship that will see her and she will be saved. And during the days she spent lost at sea, she saw a small plane flying above her, but because the life raft she was on was white and very small, they were unable to distinguish her from the wave caps, which are also white. She also spots boats on the horizon, but it soon becomes clear to her that she is invisible to them from the distance, so her hope fades away. After 3 days and a half, she no longer hopes, she just sits, her mind drifts away as she starts losing consciousness. A Greek freighter was navigating through the Providence Channel in the Bahamas, and the man in the lookout noticed in the distance one white cap that didn't seem to disappear. It was thanks to this man that Terry Jo was rescued right as she was approaching her end due to exposure and dehydration. With her testimony, Terry Jo showed that everything that Julian had told the investigators was a lie. It was further concluded that everyone on the ship, except Terry Jo, lost their lives at the hand of Julian Harvey before he sank the boat. The exact way that happened and the real motives could not be determined. However, the fact that he was the sole beneficiary of his wife's life insurance policy and that he desperately needed funds was believed to be the real reason behind his actions. Actually, when looking closely into his past, the investigators could determine that he was not a stranger to these types of things. His record showed that his former wife was killed in a car crash, and he also was involved in insurance fraud, airplane crashes, and other sunk boats. With the new information coming to light, it was mainly believed that he could have been caught by one of the Duperrault spouses when he was trying to kill his wife, and that led to his decision to kill everyone on board of the yacht. Fortunately, his plan and his attempts of hiding everything was destroyed when Terry Jo survived and was able to tell everyone the real story. Terry Jo's courage and strength surprised and impressed the whole world. She was safe, but she has lost her entire family, and she had to leave now with the trauma of everything she had to go through. Her aunt and uncle took her in and raised her as their own. Because she had never seen her father on the boat in that fateful night, she couldn't help hoping that he was still alive growing up. She accepted his passing only later in life. After all her trauma, she still felt a strong bond between her and the ocean that saved her as a child. It was her way of feeling close to her family. This is a story about more than surviving. It is a story about the strengths of the will and spirit and a proof that even after tragedy, there is a life worth living. If you want to learn more about this story, you can read the book written by none other than Terry Jo herself. The book is called Alone, Orphaned on the Ocean, and it recounts in great details everything that happened in that fateful night and after. We appreciate you taking the time to view this video about the little girl that amazed the world. Please share any further weird occurrences you may be aware of in the comments section below. For more creepy material, unexplained mysteries, and unbelievable stories, don't forget to like and subscribe.